All right, let's talk about cravings today. Cravings can be such a problem. And I want to talk about this idea of intuitive eating because it's so popular. People I really respect promote it. And when I looked into the research, it really isn't supported as a very good idea. And I know it wasn't working for me. And many of my clients have said it really wasn't working for them to get the results they wanted. So, this idea, maybe cravings are telling me, maybe it's my body telling me that it wants a certain food, that I'm lacking a certain nutrient. And I've read a bunch of articles on what does the science say about this. There's a good article in Scientific American, our food cravings, the body's way of telling us. I can't remember exactly the rest of that. The body's way of telling us what it needs. It's a popular idea. I really liked it. There's a lot of buzz about this. The idea feels good. Like, oh, I'll just, I'll bring some mindfulness, which is a good idea, right? I'll bring some mindfulness to my eating and I'll check in with my body about what it wants to eat. I just took a whole program on this and seems really based on junk science. So there's some real troubling aspects to this. I do like the idea of checking in, with my intuition. Like if you ever had a gut reaction to somebody, like I need to be careful with this person. Now, that could mean various things. It could mean they just triggered a memory of someone who hurt me, but they didn't hurt me, but I'm having that kind of reaction. But it doesn't cost very much to just say, I'm going to be careful around this person until I know them better, right? But the idea that I'm going to eat whatever I feel like eating when I stop and ask myself, what do I feel like eating? I find is often going to lead us astray. So let me talk about how I understand that works in terms of our psychology and our biology. So one thing people have suggested is when we crave something to eat or drink, it may indicate a nutritional need for that thing, right? So there are a lot of examples of animals in nature, and this happens with humans sometimes too, where an animal is eating something that seems very strange, like that can't taste good. Why would they eat that? It doesn't seem like it has really great nutritional value, but it turns out the animal might be missing a particular nutrient that eating that thing helps them access. So lots of times animals are craving something that indicates a nutritional need. We, however, as human animals, are in a very different circumstance, right? We can eat whatever we want, whatever we feel like eating, but it may not be what we feel like eating, may not be an indication of a nutritional deficit. So when researchers look at this, when you look at this Scientific American article, most of our cravings are driven by habits and cultural conditioning. So we live in an environment that very much acculturates us to desire the least nutritious, most cravingful food, right? So we can have lots of drives and desires towards certain things that we eat and drink that may be non-nutritious food-like substances, right? So you think of the conditioning of, like, a lot of people will talk to me about something that I was very familiar with, which was after I have dinner, I then have a desire and really kind of a drive to have these things that I have after dinner. So it might be popcorn or it might be ice cream, right? And it can feel initially, if you're saying, oh, I'm going to cut that habit out for a while and see if it really makes a difference for my health and my cravings and my weight, right? But we feel very uncomfortable at that moment, at that time of day when we usually would have something like that, whatever it was, like, oh, I really feel like I need that right now, right? It can even feel like a craving, and this can be conditioning. Like I just got used to, if I finish dinner and I'm sitting in front of the TV, I always have popcorn or I always have ice cream. It's going to feel awkward and kind of wrong not to, right? Or even like I'm getting ready to sit down and watch TV. Oh, I need to make the popcorn, right? These kinds of cravings, these kinds of drives are conditioned responses. I'm reading a book now called Hooked. It's really pretty good. Food, Free Will, and How the Food Giants Exploit Our Addictions. So there's just so much evidence I find in the science, I find in the research world, and I find in my own experience, and I find with my clients, there's so much evidence that we're being conditioned to desire and feel a drive for, and even physical cravings for things that are not good for us, right? So, and then it becomes our habit. We're just conditioned to have this thing in this circumstance at this kind of time. A lot of us got very conditioned to want something sweet at the end of a meal. And it feels wrong not to. I remember feeling that way. At first, it was like, oh, now that I'm grown up, I'm going to have dessert at the end of every dinner. And then it was at the end of every lunch. And then it was at breakfast too. Like, so we start wanting more and more sweet things in our diet. I have to find this to be able to share more specifically, but I saw recently a study of how much sugar has to be added to something before adults feel like it's ready to eat. It's a lot. It's way more than I think our bodies can tolerate. But when you look at children, it's even more than that. Like it needs to be even sweeter for them to feel like it's right. So feeling like something is right to us can be a matter of conditioning because our primitive brain loves habits, right? So sweet things already, we're primed to appreciate sweet things. And throughout most of human history, that was okay. It was a benign circumstance. It was a beneficial circumstance. But now in this time in history, this is a real problematic drive, a real problematic desire, a real problematic like value, extra valuing of sweet things. And now they're everywhere. So I think 300 years ago, the average person was eating 4 pounds of sugar a year. And now it's 180 pounds of sugar a year. So this is really a dangerous circumstance for the human brain because we're primed to think those things are high value, those things are really good. And now we're having way too much. So our health is going down in really big ways that go along with the overweight and obesity issues that most of us experience. But our primitive brain loves habits, and it believes habits are essential to our survival. So if it's been my habit to have ice cream every night after dinner or something sweet, and I try to stop, I'm going to feel like this is wrong. This feels really wrong. I'm just going to have it today and I'll stop tomorrow, right? Like it's going to be like it has momentum, that habit. And it's partly because the primitive brain believes this has been keeping us alive. It feels important in this, like it has a salience effect in our brain. It feels important and we've been doing it and we haven't died and we need to keep doing it. This is why changing our habits is a bit more of a deal than we tend to think, right? It's not like I'm just going to change my habits starting tomorrow. I'm just going to have sugar on Friday and Saturday nights and I'm not going to have it the rest of the week. It tends to be difficult to manage it that way. I finally realized this. I was in my mid-50s and a trained psychologist. I finally started realizing that's the best way to make something very, very important, to make it really hard to stop, is to have a little bit intermittent reinforcement. I went, oh no, but this is so scary. What am I going to do? Abstain from these things that are so important. So our brain really fiercely defends the habits we've had for years. You might have heard me tell this little analogy that I have, which is that if I've been sitting on the couch eating bonbons, drinking wine, and crying every day for a while, my brain starts thinking, this is good. Yeah, this is excellent because we didn't die today. We've been doing this every day and we didn't die. So we should keep this habit going, right? My primitive brain is not very wise. So trying to tap into a greater wisdom within me really requires being so aware of the environment I live in now, right? So if I start saying, I'm not going to have the ice cream tonight, my primitive brain says, get the ice cream, hurry up. It's time. It's what we do. What are you doing? We could die if we don't do this. It really does. So it creates this sense of pressure in us. And what I learned for a long time, even though I know better, I learned, you know what, if I just give into that pressure, I'm going to feel so much better. I'm going to get so much relief. This is pretty much what drug addiction feels like, right? What alcohol addiction feels like. And when you study food addiction, you can see very similar processes happening. And actually, food is something that our brain is so much more ready to respond to even than the drugs, right? So we get this sense of pressure, and we know if I just have the thing, that pressure will go away and I'll feel better and I'll get relief, right? And here's a really interesting thing that happens in the other part of our brain when we do that. One part of the brain that really, one function that really is relegated to the left side of the brain, and it is the part of the brain that we say does confabulation. So what that means is whenever we take an action, even though like I wasn't going to have ice cream tonight, but okay, I am having ice cream tonight. What the left side of the brain does when we give in to our primitive brain and have the ice cream is that side of the brain comes up with a reason why it was okay. This is why we did this today. It comes up with a justification. It could be making up a story, you know, well, the reason that I did that today is blah, 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 blah. And we call it confabulation because it doesn't look like there's really a lot of connection between the reason we did it and why we're telling ourselves we did it, right? Does that make sense? So I felt like it was right. My intuition told me to do it. Is it our intuition though, or is it our conditioning? Is it how we've been conditioned, how our brain has been manipulated in this environment? So autopilot takes over, keeps us going with the old habits. And then our logical brain is primed. It cannot resist coming up with a justification for it. So without exerting real intention and effort and awareness, we just get pulled back so easily to old eating habits and old conditioning, right? It's tricky, but we can overcome this. I discovered we can crave the good stuff. I'm going to speak at the American Psychological Convention this year and help other psychologists understand how they can help people with this. So rather than give your favorite latest tip for people to add on top of their pile of tips, psychologists are trained to help people with habit change. So I'm going to teach them how they can help other people change their habits. And one thing is we can really change what we crave, right? With intention. It's not going to happen by accident. It's not going to happen overnight, but it can happen. We can make progress one step at a time toward craving the good stuff. And in this environment where we've really been trained and conditioned to crave the non-nutritious stuff and call it treats and think of it as the best stuff that we're going to save room for, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about Michelina, but there's a picture of her at a wedding in Pittsburgh where they have the cookie table at a wedding, and her understanding, what I got to do is manage my calories. So I'm going to save my calories for 2 days for the cookie table, right? Which wasn't working for her. It had seemed to work for a long time in her life. And at this point, she was just gaining more and more weight, even though she was trying to eat less and less and less all the time. So when she first came to me, she said, I just teach me the eating approach and I'll go away and I'll just do it on my own because I'm really smart and I'm really disciplined and I can totally do this. And she discovered that she hadn't lost her, learning the eating approach was really important. It was life-changing, but it wasn't enough to help her stand against all those habits and all those cravings for the non-nutritious things. It wasn't enough to keep her eating in a way that would change her life. So she really, after she learned the eating approach, went away and tried to do it on her own. She came back and said, I could really use more support, more of the program for figuring out how to change my cravings, right? And figuring out how to make my new habits really get more and more in a groove and get very effortless. So I just want to talk a little about this craving the good stuff, because I believe it's one of the keys to getting slender for good. There are some people who can be just so disciplined, it's just easy for them. It's just relatively easy for them to just eat the good things once they're super clear how to eat. But a lot of us need more help with making these habits get so effortless, and more help with really coming to change what foods we value, because we've been trained since childhood. When I think about it, I thought I was eating pretty healthy, but when I think about it, from childhood, whenever I had some allowance money, I would go to the candy store. And I felt like this is so good. And whenever I'm an adult and I can make my own choices and I have my own money, I'm going to get as much of that as I can, in a way, right? So we want to change what we're craving. We want to change how much awareness we have about how we're being manipulated. We want to look forward to what we eat, right? We want to revel in it. We want to enjoy it. So one thing that really helps is resetting our system, even our sensory organs, to really crave the good foods. So I don't know if you know this, but our taste buds turn over, right? Our bodies are always changing. Our taste buds turn over in a matter of 14 days. So what tastes good to us starts to really change. Have you ever noticed this? If you went on a kick to eat a lot more nutritious foods, the nutritious foods started tasting better, especially if you were also cutting out the non-nutritious stuff that is so extra exciting on the tongue. Also, the non-nutritious stuff really changes our gut microbiome. So there's even more little organisms in our gut that are non-human, right? Little bacteria that could be yelling for more and more sugar. There's even more of those than there are human cells in our body. Like, we need to live in concert with those guys and think about what we're feeding them so that we have the best life. So like, one of my clients today, just 3 weeks in, was talking about, I've really been cutting out non-nutritious foods and eating so much more nutritious foods. And I was having this difficulty with my yoga practice that I now realize it's gone already. This is going away it's because I must have had inflammation in my system from what I was putting in my gut. Yeah, it's like our bodies tell us really pretty fast. So when we change what we're eating a lot of and what we're eating a little of, it can really reset our system in terms of our taste buds, in terms of our gut microbiome and what it wants, and in terms of our brain and what it values. So you can kind of hear this is a little bit of a process, right? It's not just a matter of, I see the answers and I suddenly eat that way. I haven't really found anyone could do that. That's why I created the Slender for Good system and program, is because first people need to learn the eating approach. And that takes me about 7 hours to get people to I see. Okay, I thought I was doing this, but I'm not actually doing this. And then I really like to work with people for the next year so that they're really changing their cravings. They're changing what they think and feel about how they eat. And they're changing what's natural to eat, what feels right to eat, and they're changing their habits. So it's getting more and more in a groove, more and more effortless to eat what's good for us, right? So there's so many cultural ideas that are leading us astray. So first is really learning the nuances. That's the first step to getting slender for good. Was what is truly healthy, slenderful eating, right? How much of the nutritious foods do I have to eat? What are truly nutritious foods? Because we're being lied to about that all the time. Where should I put the non-nutritious food-like substances that I consider treats, right? So first is really learning how to eat this way, getting super, super clear and specific. And second, my chair is squeaking. Second, you need to change your psychology, right? You need to change what you actually crave eating and actually come to crave the good stuff. And this is going to be the title of my second book is Crave the Good, the Psychology of Healthy Eating. And it's what I'm going to speak at the American Psychological Association convention on. The smart, mostly women and some men that I work with closely in the Slender for Good program, they tell me all the time, this isn't hard. And they pretty quickly start saying, this is actually easy. This is easy to do. And I can tell you, at first, it doesn't necessarily feel easy. It's like, wait, what am I doing? It like takes this attention and takes this awareness that feels a little awkward and uncomfortable at first. And so I really coach my clients. Those initial feelings of awkwardness are a sign you're actually changing something, right? But then pretty quickly they say, this isn't hard. And they start to say, this is actually easy. It makes so much sense. One of the reasons it gets easy is we're not having to make so many decisions about eating and drinking every day, right? Researchers find that Americans are making over 200, on average, over 200 eating and drinking decisions every day, which is ridiculously exhausting. And it's going to fatigue you. It's going to wear you down for everything else you're trying to do in life. So eating should be this nourishing thing that gives you all kinds of energy and ability to think and ability to do stuff. The way we're eating is having the opposite effect. It's exhausting us. And so it gets easy when you get super clear. Oh, I'm going to eat this way. This is what works. This is what makes sense. It's easy. And it also becomes easy because you start to crave the good stuff. It just starts tasting better, right? So the way people talk about it, it's ease, it's effortlessness, it's peaceful. It's joyful. So it took me years to discover what works. And then it took me years to develop and refine an approach to help others get giant breakthroughs in their health and vitality and weight for good, right? So to help others like me, I created the Slender for Good program, and it's hundreds of times more effective than most weight loss programs. And I'm really proud of it. And there's several reasons why it's much more effective that I want to share with you, because I want you to see the difference between this works and these things don't, no matter what people tell you. Rather than eating what we feel like eating, what do I feel like eating right now? It's a really bad approach, right? It's going to drive us to emotional eating. It's going to drive us into cravingful eating. So rather than that, we learn what truly healthful eating consists of. These days, the things we think are healthy are often cravingful, non-nutritious, highly processed food-like substances, right? So we need to get really clear in this environment, what is actually healthy to eat? What are the truly nutritious foods and how much of them should we eat, right? Because the research shows only about 40% of the average American's diet is actually nutritious foods, 40%. So I could be doing quite a bit better than the average person and still not be close enough to be getting good results, to be eating healthfully. So checking in with my head, what's going to be healthy to eat now? Only if I'm getting quite educated about it. So that's the first thing, is we get more educated. What does truly healthful eating look like? What are the highly nutritious foods? How much of them ought we eat to actually be well, right? It takes some learning in this environment and a lot of unlearning. All right, so that's the first thing, is it's based on this eating approach that works. Second, I designed this program to support building a psychology that supports ongoing, truly healthy eating. Almost everybody that I meet that is smart and wants to figure out how to do this says, I can only do it for a little while. I can't get consistent with it. It's a bigger deal to change these habits than you're thinking. So we need to become aware of our deranged food environment and see it for what it is. Like if you swim in it, it's hard to see it, right? We need to see how our food environment is manipulating our brains and our biochemistry so that we desire the things that we most desire, the things that are the most harmful, and we least desire the things that are the most beneficial. So we need to see that. And then we can start to build the cravings. Like once we get clear what's good to eat, and we get aware of how our environment is manipulating us, we can transform what we feel like eating. So with intention, we can come to crave the good foods. And this is the part of my program that is the reason a psychologist had to design this program. And it's something I just don't see other programs addressing anywhere near enough, right? And then the next thing that we need to do is really get these habits rolling so that they happen regardless of context. If my habits are context dependent, they're going to be not so much habits, right? I'm going to have to be deciding and thinking and trying and effort all the time. We really want to get out of it being effort all the time. So part of how I make this work and Slender for Good is I created a high touch program. I know all my clients, we meet either one-on-one or in small groups. We have this community of people. We're building so much greater awareness of our food environment and how we're being manipulated. We're really changing not just our behavior, but our thoughts and feelings about what's good to eat and what's good to drink. And then we're mastering the eating habits that transform our lives, right? So Michelina, feeling like I'm really smart. I've been a really good dieter my whole life. Just give me the diet and I can do it. She came back to me and she said, okay, I love this eating approach. It totally makes sense, but I'm finding it is not that easy to get it rolling along. That was after the initial 8-week program that I was doing at the time. And so she said, okay, I could use more community, more guidance, more support, help me get these habits so they just become so easy. And yeah, she got not only got the weight that she wanted, but she's in her 70s now. All these health issues resolved. She had issues with her liver. She had issues with pain and inflammation that resolved. She had really troublesome gastrointestinal symptoms that just went away. Also, her husband really benefited from the way she changed sort of the eating in their household. So to tap into wisdom within us really requires awareness of how much derangement is around us, how much derangement, nutritional derangement we grew up with. It kind of breaks my heart. But it's also breaking our health, and it's breaking our healthcare system that so many of us now, over 80% are overweight or obese. Most of us are also developing concurrent diseases like high blood pressure, heart disease, high blood sugar, cancer, and diabetes, and dementia as we get older. And I just find it looks like that's not necessary in most of our cases if we transform how we eat. And eating is really the big driver. There are other drivers, but eating is the big one that contributes not 3%, but 40% to whether we're going to have those diseases or not. So it doesn't have to be so hard. That's my big message, but it also isn't something people are going to be able to figure out on their own without support and help. Having somebody hold your hand through this habit change process is part of how I'm able to promise the Slender for Good results. Like by the end of working in this program for a year, these habits are rolling. So in this food environment without clear guidance, checking in, what do I feel like eating? I think it's a mistake for most of us, and it's not going to lead us toward the nutritious foods. Remember, only 40% of what we're eating is nutritious. The rest is highly processed stuff packaged to suggest that it's healthy. This is healthy. This has antioxidants. This has this has that. And it's a lie. We're not eating enough of the highly nutritious foods, not even close. And when you do, changes everything so fast, really. All right. I hope that was helpful. Reach out to me if you're ready. I'm ready to make a change. I'm ready to get some help and support with this. I would love to help you. I'm on a mission. I don't want women in my age group to be suffering with inflammation that they don't have to suffer with gut issues, with high blood pressure, high blood sugar. Like a lot of these things can be turned around with changing our diet, and at least it's worth a try, right? All right. Reach out if you'd like to learn more. Take care.